the criticisms of Trump more or less are bunk. The hysteria is bunk. The protection of the invaders is treacherous. The other big news is the judicial coups, as I call it, the judicial lawfare against President Trump. So there have been some developments. The Supreme Court announced essentially using the case that Trump is trying to advocate that natural-born citizenship should be limited to those who are natural-born citizens of citizens, not the offspring of people who are here illegally or here in a transitory way. If you're just visiting and passing through, your kid doesn't become a citizen if they're born here. If you're here illegally, your kid doesn't become a citizen if they're born here. Straightforward, in my view, reading of the 14th Amendment. So there have been challenges to Trump's efforts to strictly enforce the 14th Amendment along the lines I'm suggesting. Now, the Supreme Court isn't going to hear that specific merits issue next month, but they are going to consider the issue of what's known as nationwide injunctions, where, for instance, Judge Boasberg, in the case of the Alien Enemies Act, issued a nationwide injunction protecting any Venezuelan designated by Trump from being removed. And there's been case after case of that happening in ways, in a number, that's never happened before in American history, of course, most of which is targeting Trump. So the Supreme Court's going to hear that in May, and which augurs well, and it's not a prediction of what they'll do, but it shows that there's significant interest in the issue at the court. But then you got all of this MS-13, but then there's this insanity around, frankly, sometimes judicial insanity around the deportations of Americans, of non-Americans, of illegal alien criminals. And I was on Newsmax talking about this the other day. Let's go to clip 11.
Meantime, Massachusetts Judge Indira Telwani is unconstitutionally trying to stop the Trump administration by issuing another nationwide injunction to revoke and deport 500,000 illegal aliens who were flown in here by the Biden regime under the parole program. This judicial tyranny is a direct violation of the president's Article 2 powers. Everybody sees that. Doesn't Congress need to act to rein in this judiciary before the entire country loses complete confidence in the judicial branch?
Well, Congress needs to do what Congress is able to do under the Constitution to ensure that judges don't abuse their powers. And they have a variety of techniques available to them, limiting on jurisdiction and how broad their injunctions can be. Can have one district court judge essentially grind the federal government to a halt when it comes to immigration enforcement? And then, of course, you've got the impeachment power ultimately. And none of this seems to have been used thus far by Congress in recent, frankly, not years, but decades. And it's about time Congress take a look at all of those options. And just on this specific case, so Joe Biden brings in tens of thousands of individuals in an abusive parole authority, just in a whole fell swoop. And President Trump wants to remove that parole amnesty. And the judge says, oh, no, you can't do it. And you have to do each person one at a time. So it would take decades potentially to remove everyone that Biden brought in minutes. It's just an absurd double standard in terms of the law. And, these judges sat by, not specifically, but generally, the judiciary sat by as Joe Biden let an invasion occur into these United States. They did virtually nothing. But President Trump removes one person, it's a constitutional crisis. Yeah. That was a good interview. You should share it. And now there's this, it's very strange, the left has become the party or the movement of MS-13. I mean, look at this I highlighted. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that there now seems to be an MS-13 caucus in Congress. They probably share office space with the Hamas caucus. I mean, it's kind of a half a joke, a half of a joke, but the other half ain't all that funny, is it? I mean, you had the senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, travel to El Salvador to meet with someone the government has, was an illegal alien, had no right to be here. B, credible, significant evidence presented by the government, more than enough to designate him as such under the law and make him further deportable, MS-13 member. And the constitutional rub is that there was an immigration order that prevented him from being removed to El Salvador, and they accidentally moved him to El Salvador, and the courts have said now you got to try to get him back or facilitate his removal, and there's a judge who is fanatically abusing his office, in my view, and targeting Trump to advocate for running foreign policy when it comes to getting this non-citizen out of El Salvador, who's a criminal by all accounts, and back into the United States? Yes, the administration deported him to the wrong country, in theory, and I don't even think that's the case. Everything you hear about how outrageous the administration's actions are, in my experience, and I've looked at them all because I don't want to be supporting any unlawful conduct. Judicial Watch doesn't want to support unlawful conduct. It's bunk. It's bunk. The criticisms of Trump, more or less, are bunk. The hysteria is bunk. The protection of the invaders is treacherous. There's an entire political movement spending time, effort, and money misusing the court process. Judges, too many of which allowing them to do so, to help illegal alien invaders reside here in the country illegally and effectively make it impossible to ever remove them. Even when they're denied jurisdiction, even when the Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that, they don't stop. We see this with Judge Boasberg, the chief judge here in the District of Columbia. He was removed from the case on the Alien Enemies Act, removed from the case on Venezuela. The Supreme Court found he had no jurisdiction, and Judge Boasberg is trying to set up a scenario. He's found good cause. Here, I'll read the tweet. Now we go back to the tweet. I've carefully reviewed Chief Judge Boasberg's memorandum opinion, finding probable cause to believe Trump team members engaged in contempt of court. I found nothing persuasive in the opinion to suggest any such thing, and certainly no evidence suggesting criminal conduct. Though it now seems the court now has a procedural vehicle to engage in what is in effect judicial lawfare and harassment of the Trump administration, despite the Supreme Court's finding he had absolutely no jurisdiction to issue any of the orders over which he now seems willing to throw administration officials in jail for allegedly not obeying. Now, does it mean he gets impeached? I don't know. I do know he is really pushing the line in terms of his jurisdiction. Arguing over when planes took off. No plane took off before he said they couldn't take off with these Venezuelan nationals. You read this decision, you wonder what is going on here, that a senior judge here in the District of Columbia is spending or engaged in all this noise signifying nothing legally. And the goal is to try to leverage this case to put to put his appointees in jail. I don't know if they want to put, well, they do want to put Trump in jail. Whether this is a vehicle or not, I don't think it is. But you know what they're up to. So we're supposed to shut down our foreign policy systems and turn it over to a court judge because, according to the left, they mistakenly sent a gang member to the wrong country? I don't think so. Zero interest, as I said in the Newsmax piece. You know that generally. They have zero interest in the victims of these illegal alien marauders. Zero interest. President Trump met with the victim, the mother of a young woman who was murdered in Maryland. You know, Van Hollen, basically ignored that murder. And he's down there desperate to meet with a terrorist. MS-13's been designated a terrorist operation. I wonder if that's legal or not. Man, I'm getting so mad, I'm going to tear up the paper I need to use. But, Trump's got a good team around him. I mean, they've gotten, and they deserve, as far as I'm concerned, he should get the Nobel Peace Prize for gaining control of the border. The border's under control now. For practical purposes, we've got control of the border now. We've got millions to remove, but the border invasion has virtually stopped at the southern border. And one of the architects of that strategy, under President Trump's leadership, is Stephen Miller. Sharp guy, I've known him for years. I knew him back when he was in the Senate, and he's a fine patriot, effective spokesman for President Trump, keen mind, and he just tore it up on Fox the other day. Let's play this clip. It's something you're going to enjoy.
So I want to correct, I hate to do it, Bill, but I got to correct you on every single thing that you said, because it was all wrong. First, we won the Supreme Court case. Clearly, 9-0, a district court judge said unconscionably that the president and his administration have to go into El Salvador and extradite one of their citizens, an El Salvadorian citizen, so that would be kidnapping, that we have to kidnap an El Salvadorian citizen against the will of his government and fly him back to America, which would be an unimaginable act and an invasion of El Salvador's sovereignty. So he appealed to the Supreme Court, and it said clearly, no district court can compel the president to exercise his Article II foreign powers in any way whatsoever. DOJ called me after that Supreme Court ruling, and they said, this is amazing. We won this case 9-0. We are in excellent standing here. So this has been portrayed wrong for 72 hours in the media. They said the most a court could ever compel you to do would be to facilitate return, which would basically mean if El Salvador voluntarily sends him back, we wouldn't block him at the airport. We would put him back into ICE detention, and then he would be deported either back to El Salvador or somewhere else. The Supreme Court said that is the most the government can be expected to do. So we won the case handily. The misreporting on this has been atrocious.
Okay,
Secondly,
I appreciate
he was
the
not, no, Bill,
clarification
And the judge took that ruling and is ordering and wants to investigate everything the Trump administration's doing in this regard. We didn't put these judges in place to run our foreign policy. And the court sometimes tries to be nice, tries to be normal, tries to be sensible, and that they're not dealing with an approach in the judiciary that abides by that. The left isn't wanting to be nice, isn't wanting to be normal. I mean, there are abusers at the district court level, and frankly at the appellate court level, that don't get the message if it's not presented in a blunt fashion and a more direct, succinct, and powerful way. You can't let these judges abuse our constitutional system, my dear justices on the Supreme Court. You give them an inch, they will take a mile. We see that their judicial decision-making, to be charitable, because this is a passive description, has been ruined by their anti-Trump animus. Ruined. They should be looking at removing judges engaged in this type of behavior from considering these issues further, which is another, maybe the Trump administration, I think they've tried to do that in a few cases, but that should be more often utilized. Heal thyself, physician, my friends in the judiciary, because the other options are congressional action, impeachment, etc. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.